Talk Radio 77 WABC, America's most powerful radio station. This is War Room Pandemic, the New York City special report. We are live today in the War Room on Capitol Hill. Jason Miller, Jack Maxey, Raheem Kassam, the entire team. Yesterday, a shocking press conference over 2 hours long. The President of the United States going through with his team of Dr. Fauci, a native of Brooklyn. The President of the United States from Queens walked through the analytics, the numbers, and shocked a nation that 100,000 to 240,000 American citizens, civilians, could end up under certain circumstances to die from this pandemic that came roaring out of central China, compliments of the Chinese Communist Party. Okay, today we're going to go through that and get some buried leads. Very important. New York City is the center of this. This storm is raging as it comes ashore. I think we've got some numbers, though. We're going to talk about models that were done. These models were all done by not government officials. They were done by not CDC, not NIH. They were really done by University of Washington, Harvard, Stanford. They took a compilation of them. We've talked about these University of Washington, all these models for weeks and weeks and weeks. And we've got a little bit, I think Jack Maxey will talk later in the show about how it compares to where New York City is today. But when I'm first going to go, let's go to, I want to play some tapes because we're going to talk about this additional 30 days. We're now in this 30-day of spreading the curve, or spreading the curve. This is from the 15 days we had. Now we're into the 30 days. The Mike Pence task force. Let's go to what happened yesterday. I want to talk about Pence, what he said today, and then what can be a program to really smash the curve.
Here's Dr. Debbie Birx.
Simultaneously, there was a modeler out of the University of Washington that modeled from cases up, utilizing the experience around the globe to really understand how this information that we have from Italy and Spain and South Korea and China could really help us give insight into the hospital needs, the ventilator needs, and really the number of people who potentially could succumb to this illness. It is this model that we are looking at now that provides us the most detail of the time course that is possible. But this model assumes full mitigation.
Okay, that is I don't think people picked up on. And this is what's central to what's happening in New York right now. Remember, the example she used was China, Italy, Spain, and that these numbers were correct if you had full mitigation. And the question is, what is full mitigation? Well, I tell you what it is not. It is what is in the 30 days to slow the spread. That is not full mitigation. This is some overall kind of guidance for how this hodgepodge of how states are doing. Let's go to not the doctor. We'll come back to the doctor, but I want to go to the Mike Pence. Mike Pence was interviewed today by CNN, and I think he had some big reveals in there we got to talk about.
Should regular Americans start wearing masks or scarves or bandanas right now? We're getting a lot of confusing, conflicting advice on that.
Well, I can tell you that the White House Coronavirus Task Force has the CDC looking at the issue of masks as a protective measure right now. It was a number of weeks ago the CDC did issue guidance that if you have the coronavirus, even if you're asymptomatic, one of the ways to protect others is to wear a mask. But right now, I've had them looking at the science. We'll have a recommendation for the president. But every American should know that as you go out of doors, you're taking a walk, you're getting some exercise, as long as you keep 6 feet distance from anyone, you practice that social distancing that we've been making clear over the last several weeks, that will give as much protection as anything else.
And let's go to the thing about the CDC. Let's go. By the way, I don't think that's actually technically correct, right? And about the mask, but also the social separation. We have many places throughout the country that are much more difficult, and in fact, they don't want you going out and walking around. That's why I think there's conflicting. When you say full mitigation, I don't think that plays in the full mitigation. I think they have to define the president, and he's going to step up here in a few minutes. I think the president's going to do a press conference. Is that I think now we need definitions. We need more refinement on the numbers. Jack's already saying that, hey, it looks like these numbers are starting to trend down, although New York City's still in the second derivative positive, right, increasing at an increasing rate. It looks like they're not going to hit the numbers in the University of Washington. But on a policy basis, people have to know the duration that we're talking about and the actions that have to be taken.
Well, and especially in a city like New York, when we talk about even the basic, do you have a mask when you go outside or not? And the mayor of New York, Mayor de Blasio, saying they need additional 3 million masks, I believe, by Sunday. But when we saw Dr. Fauci yesterday in the press conference, when he said that someone sneezes, what the distance of that can be. Well, New York, even if you're in a situation where it's shelter in place or people aren't going outside, you're going to be passing people on the sidewalk, or even if the street's closed off. And if they're saying that a sneeze can possibly go 20 feet, I mean, when's the last time you had 20 feet of open air in New York on the sidewalk?
But I'm not sure full mitigation. Remember, what she said is you hit these numbers with the range of 100,000 to 240,000 dead with full mitigation, right? They have not defined, and then he comes out. I think full mitigation, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's shelter in place. I think it's shelter in place, which means you're not supposed to go out and be walking around mask. You're definitely supposed to have a mask, but you're not supposed to be walking around.
Let's go to the clip, this next one of Vice President Pence.
Our healthcare experts on the White House coronavirus task force to give the president the very best projections. They call it modeling, Wolf, where they look at what's happened around the world. We think Italy may be the most comparable area to the United States.
Okay. For those who have followed this show since we started on WABC, and particularly those who have started back in January when we've done the morning show, that is not the example you want to use. Italy is by far the worst example. It is an example, and we kept saying half measures, half applied. Remember, they tried to lock down the cities up in the north, but they didn't really get it done. They tried to lock down Milan, but it was after Fashion Week. Everything they tried to do was all half measures, and they've become the poster child for being a debacle.
Yeah, Italy's like one of those demotivational posters where you have the ship going towards the iceberg and it says failure, and it says, did you ever stop to think that maybe your failures in life are to set an example for others? Like, Italy's what you don't want to do.
And by the way, Italy's also where you've seen the collapse of the medical system. Unless he was saying, because Italy now is starting to peak, but I don't think that's what he's talking about. We haven't started to peak as a country. The whole raison d'etre of the University of Washington, which to show the waves as other people came in late and started doing half measures, you're going to have a series of peaks in the U.S. We're going to get to how long this is going to take. But my point, if Italy really is the example they think we are, today at the press conference, they ought to walk through and tell the American people why we are like Italy. If that's the case, if New York is essentially Lombardy or Han, in their assessment, we ought to go through that.
Well, I would give a little bit of props to Italy. They have a tough time. They live multi-generationally. They have the second highest demographic of any country on planet Earth. They're just behind Japan. If we look at the lethality there, it is almost all of it is clustered in the 70 above. As of last Friday, they'd only had one person under 29 years of age die and 7 between the ages of 29 and 39. So clearly, they have a little bit of a different demographic issue than we have. I can't imagine that New York City's age demographic
The medical professionals themselves,
48.
they have now, I think, 12% of the doctors and nurses have infected. I think are the casualties, something like 10% of the doctors and nurses either infected or have already passed away.
As of Monday, 10,000 healthcare workers tested positive.
10,000. They're the ones that have most complaint. The Italian people definitely deserve props. There is no way. At least initially, the way that they did this, you can give props to the Italian government. I mean, it was nothing defined, and when they decided to do something, they didn't really do it. Remember, the 12 towns in Lombardy, when they said we're going to put you on lockdown, they didn't really lock it down. Mm-hmm. Remember those mayors? They had the compilation of the mayors. The mayor said, "Hey, you're going to have a graduation party. I'm showing up with a blowtorch." Right? Local officials had to kind of take over. So here's my point. If that was a Freudian slip, or if there's some modeling thing that they do think we're like Italy, which you can't imagine, but if that is really internally what they're talking about, it's very important for transparency to put on the table, here's why we think we are heading towards...
Or if he meant to scare people. And I'm saying
Yeah.
this in a good
Right.
way. Like, hey, guys, unless we get our act together, unless Florida, hey, Governor DeSantis, we talk about Governor Half Whitmer in Michigan, unless you governors go and get your act together, or unless we go and start following some of these guidelines, we are going to end up like Italy. Or if he was sending that message, that would also make sense. We got tied together.
What were the casualty? Casualty rate's almost the mortality rate isn't it only like 10% in Italy, Jack?
Yes, in Italy it's 10%. Now that's the highest in the world. And Germany,
I got that,
it's
but I don't want.
0.05.
Listen, here's my point. And we're going to come back in a second. When you lay out to the American people 100,000 to 240,000, which kind of comes as a shock, when on Friday you were talking about opening up the country, you clearly have made a decision. I think this decision is President Trump, who's a very visceral guy. It's because of New York and understanding getting back of these numbers. I'll tell you what, let's take it. We're going to take a break. There's so much stuff to get to. Hashtag War Room Pandemic, at War Room Pandemic, at War Room 2020, and our new one, hashtag 30 Days to Save America. We're going to get into the details. We're setting you up, understand the math, and we're going to come back of how we have to think about this in the next 30 days, or according to Mike Pence, maybe in the next 60 days. We're going to return 77 WABC in a second.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Nothing is inevitable, so says Donald J. Trump, the 45th President of the United States. Welcome back to New York's Talk Radio, 77 WABC. This is War Room Pandemic, the New York City Special Report. We just had one of the most historic marches in the entire history of our republic, and we are on the beginning day of what will be an April like no as President Trump, Governor Cuomo, everybody has said the next 2-3 weeks are going to be absolutely horrific. And what they're talking about is New York City, because New York City is going to be the first major entity to really hit its apex on this coronavirus, and the entire world's attention is riveted on this, as it is the closest prototype, I guess, to Wuhan. We're very concerned about the numbers that were laid out yesterday, the analytics and back of that, because it's going to drive policy. The President of the United States, I think, is going to take the stage here momentarily for the afternoon press conference. We do know in his schedule, Jason, which was kind of different, they listed the intelligence report on the public, his intelligence briefing on the page on the public today, which traditionally they have not been doing. You haven't seen it in a couple of weeks. We do have a number. You know, Jack has been talking about this, about the Navy carrier. There's a number of situations on national security. You have this issue about Iran. You've got they had this, I think, a conference call day with military families. Clearly, there's something that they're trying to get they're trying to get the armed forces on board, letting people understand that they're on top of this.
Yeah, and look, I think a great idea for the task force would be to have a press conference or press briefing with the Joint Chiefs and bring them in.
Yeah,
and show
we've advocated that a long time.
Yeah, because the concern is if you have a aircraft carrier that's sidelined, that is a big deal. And then you wonder how many other ships, and you have a lot of questions just being raised about general military preparedness. We don't want to have people worried about that too.
Jack, we're going to have, let's go to the New York numbers. We're going to get a better cut at this over the next couple of days. But just on the back of the envelope, with the University of Washington study versus where you really think these numbers are today, New York doesn't look like it's quite in as bad a shape.
Well, this is actually really positive news, and you did notice today in Cuomo's press conference, he was a little calmer, and he said, it looks like we might lose 16,000 people in New York, which is a heck of a lot of people. Let's not confuse ourselves, but it's not like the horrible numbers that we were talking about, say, 2 weeks ago. Now, something that's interesting on the University of Washington site where they've done those charts, and you've seen those charts at the president's press briefing, the estimations for April 1st today on their chart would be that New York would need 50,841 beds. That's how many patients would be hospitalized. Today, the governor told us that 12,000 patients are in hospital with COVID-19. So we have plenty of beds.
Have plenty of capacity as well.
And they also said that the ICU beds needed would be 9,918. What we heard today is 3,022 are in operation. Ventilators, they said that they would need 7,976. I couldn't get an exact number for today, but ABC reported last night that yesterday there were 300 patients in the state on ventilators.
Okay, here's what's, I think, is one of the things that's happening, is that Cuomo is coming at this, as we say, with every tool in the toolbox. We know that he's doing this compressed test for trial for hydroxychloroquine. The gap here between the ICU units and the ventilators, to me, is that they're using a therapeutic. We'll get to the bottom of this, but I mean, we're hearing it anecdotally, but
we'll
whatever.
know very soon.
We'll know very soon, but that gap is because they're using every tool in the toolbox.
Well, they can't say it if it is that because Dr. Trump was the one who recommended taking that path.
But he did get the FDA waiver, so
Of
you
course,
could
of course.
actually
He did. I give him a lot of credit.
Technically you could actually use it.
Yeah, and look, this goes right to the kind of person that Trump is. I mean, even though he comes across as a brusque sort of guy, he's a guy with a lot of empathy. And I think that
Big time.
the citizens can see that he actually does care about people. Like, I thought it was very moving the other day when he recognized his friend who's in the hospital, right? You could see that it was coming.
That had a big
coming
part.
home
That
to
had a
Donald
big
Trump,
part
too.
with the decision. That had a big thing to do with this is not the flu. This is something because said, hey, this is a tough guy. I want to play the Pence part about when this is going to be over because this is to tee us up to come back and to drill down more because, look, the country can only take so much of this. We've been an advocate. If you're going to do it, you've got to do it hard. You've got to get through this. We don't as a country, we're not psychologically set up just to sit back. But more importantly, the finances of the country, the capital markets. Remember, this is a threefold. You get the pandemic, the economic crisis, the financial crisis. We don't have unlimited trillions to throw into the furnace here. So it's got to be, people have to see some clarity, and that's driven by action. But let's play this because I think this adds more to the confusion.
Tough days ahead, and the president was straight with the American people about that. But I hope people look at what happens if all of us continue to do our part, and that is by sometime in early June, we could well have the coronavirus largely behind us as a nation, reopen our country, put America back to work.
And would 100,000 people presumably be dead by then in early June here in the United States? Is that what you're saying?
The time frame for the epidemic is a period of time where the number of losses becomes much lower by about Memorial Day weekend and June 1st.
I hope that this is addressed today. If not, we have to get this addressed, right? And we're going to talk about the 30 Days to Save America. This is laid out as this 30-day program. Remember, they were going to open up by Easter. It was decided over the weekend. First, President Trump talked about quarantining New York City. It backed off that, but clearly they talked about it. Laid out a 30-day program. We've come up, we think, with a tougher, harder program. But that was a set period of time. There was never any discussion. There hasn't been any discussion about an additional month.
Well, there has and there hasn't. And
there's been implications in some.
So when the president gave his Rose Garden remarks on Sunday, he said the 30 days, but then he said by June. So he already had the tease there. Dr. Chris Murray from University of Washington said his model factored into that. Essentially the stay at home all the way through May. We need to come back to this after the break.
We're going to come back and get in all this. This is New York's Talk Radio, 77 WABC. We're breaking it all down for you. You need the facts, and we're going to give you the facts on War Room Pandemic.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
New York's Talk Radio, 77 WABC. This is War Room Pandemic, the New York City Special Report. Stephen K. Bannon. We got the team in the War Room today. Jack Maxey, Jason Miller, Raheem Kassam. Contact us. Give us your observations, your thoughts, things you want us to cover. Hashtag War Room Pandemic is a lively conversation over there. The President of the United States is about to take the stage to give us the 2-minute warning. There is a general on the stage. Good call, Jason Miller. This is, I believe, going to be a detailed briefing like yesterday. I think the president will probably go into some action plans and things they're covering. But yesterday was, let's be honest, it was a disturbing. We thought it was a day that was long in coming, that you could see these models and eventually it was going to be addressed. I do think it was quite shocking to have the president up there talking about 100,000 to 240,000 casualties with full mitigation. It means if you get everything right. Let's go back. We still got Mike Pence on another clip we got to play on Pence.
Yeah, and we're getting that Pence clip teed up. I want to go to Dr. Chris Murray.
Let's do Murray first. And by the way, I want everybody to Raheem and Jack, you jump in with breaking news off of this press conference because this is a fast-moving story.
This is University of Washington's Dr. Chris Murray with Anderson Cooper.
And this idea of 84,000 deaths by early August, is that based on the idea of current social distancing as it now continues, or that it becomes more strict or less?
So this is a planning model. We started out trying to help hospitals, our own hospital system here at the University of Washington, plan. So we're trying to make the best possible predictions of what the course of the epidemic is going to be. And when we've done that, we've made the assumption, because we actually think this is what will happen, that social distancing, including the stay-at-home orders, will continue to the end of May. And
So that's the key there. Dr. Chris Murray, who did this University of Washington study, they factored in that we would have these social distancing measures in place until the end of May. And so when we saw President Trump on Sunday night say, we're going to have the 30 days, we'll continue this for another 30 days. We hope that by June we're going to be back to normal. We heard the vice president talk about the end of May, beginning of June. This is what they're talking about. I don't see any scenario in which there is going to be a lifting of this national shutdown until the end of May.
But that's why you've got to go to harder measures today. Every day you're burning daylight. We had Larry Lindsey on the morning show the other day saying, hey, just the logistics system of the United States can't be allowed to atrophy for an unlimited amount of time. He says probably by the first couple of weeks of May, you're going to have some problems on the supply and distribution chain, the supply chain. Also, in addition, remember, we cover this 3 ways: pandemic, economic crisis, financial crisis, the economic bridge that we've talked about, that $2.3 trillion. And the key to that is forcing cash so that you out there in the audience, the small businessman is not going to miss his payroll, that the little guy is going to be able to get a paycheck. Right?
Esper is at the podium. Secretary Esper.
So the Defense Department's coming in. You were absolutely correct. This is why the whole thing was planned today. This is why they had the intelligence briefing, the talk with the military families. I'm sure he's going to address the situation with the USS Roosevelt, the aircraft carrier that's now starting to be infected with sailors getting this. Also, this Iran situation is starting to pop its head up. Hopefully, they also address Saudi Arabia, our quote-unquote allies that are crushing us. Raheem, you got something?
You say you've got General Milley,
Chairman of the Joint Chiefs,
Admiral Gildy.
I think he's Chief of Naval Operations. Last time I looked, it looked like the Joint Chiefs of Staff to me.
Admiral Schultz, Attorney General Barr, and the president opening up for the first couple of minutes with his press conference today, talking about increased activity against cartels, criminals, and terrorists. The United States launching enhanced counter-narcotics operations is the substance so far, which might seem a little off-piste, but of course, in a time like this, people try and take advantage. He's talking about the southern border, and obviously we're going to hear from the other grandees on the stage.
It's interesting that the scientists are not up there today. Maybe they're off to the side. Maybe they're not ready to talk about some of the harsher measures that they're thinking of taking. Let's go. I want to go back. That's why this is so key. You've laid this out, and May has never been on the table. If you're talking about a 60-day, you need to be laying that out now. Right, because 60-day, first off, that means a phase 4 program of another couple of $1 trillion is going to have to be in there. There's going to come some point. Powell says that the full faith and credit of the American taxpayer in the Federal Reserve is going to be in back of. We've already put a $6 trillion bazooka into the capital markets to prop them up. Right. This means if you're talking about May and already You've got Pence a couple of times in his interview today. You have other people talking about it. And I just don't think people psychologically are going to be able to get their heads around 2 months.
Well,
right?
and look, I mean, we saw the state of Virginia come out yesterday and say June 10th, and which people are like, whoa, 30 days to save America, 70 days to save Virginia. I think the numbers are going to end up being a lot closer than we
If you're going to take
thought.
the time, that's why the 30 days to slow the spread it doesn't work, because it is more it's pushing off to this hodgepodge of state and local authorities, some of which are hard shelters in place. I think there's still 15 states that don't have it. Reluctantly, Florida came on board today, obviously, right? You still have some big states I think are not even on board yet. It's a hodgepodge of, some are fairly restrictive, some are not restricted. I don't happen to think New York City is restricted enough given the scale of the problem. And if you're going to do it, that's why our 30 Days to Save America, let's walk through that program. It's a tough program. One of the principal beneficiaries will be New York City, because we are adamantly opposed for international flights to be coming in here right now into JFK.
Yeah, and so when we talk about the 30 days, I mean, we're talking about, number one, let's stop all domestic flights. Let's stop all domestic train travel. Let's stop all non-essential automobile travel. Stop all international flights. Again, that's with the exception of
right.
That's passenger flights, not talking about trade. I think we absolutely need to also stop the border crossings, Canada and Mexico. Again,
trade across, but everything else ought to lock down the borders.
Right. I think we have to have a national shelter in place. I think this is just an absolutely no-brainer, and I think that people should be required to wear masks when they're going outside.
Also, to the degree that vehicular traffic should be limited to logistics and emergencies, this should be a national lockdown. If you want to get rid of this virus, you've got to go hard on this.
As Jack pointed out this morning, also with the FDA now ruling that doctors can go and prescribe hydroxychloroquine, even though it's off-label, they can go and prescribe that out to people. We're seeing this. We think this is having an impact. We're seeing too much evidence that this is working to go and say that it shouldn't be.
I mean, I think it's one of the reasons New York. So you've got to get people. You've got to start going hard on that. And Jack, talk about the antibodies. We need not just mass testing for the coronavirus itself, but also for the antibodies.
Well, the main reason for the antibodies, and we've spoken about this before, is that we have no idea how many people have been infected. We don't know how many people have been infected and reached a cure and therefore had some antibodies in their system. The antibody test is much simpler than the one testing for the live virus itself. And we could produce these at the levels of millions. And maybe it's a little bit early, but I do think getting them out there and testing a vast population give us a better window on just how many people are infected, because the whole idea of herd immunity, I know this is not fashionable, but it's what happens eventually, even if you flatten the curve.
But
how close are we to that is a real interesting question.
But this would get us off of Pence saying we're like Italy and get us more focused on Germany. Right? I mean, Germany has done a good job, and one of the reasons they've done this antibody test. Once you do the antibody test, you get I don't know if it's a certificate.
No, it actually
but you
is.
Basically you're allowed to go back to work.
You get a bill of clean health.
If you want to open up the economy, that's the way you got to open up, with healthy people and people that are not going to be affected by the virus.
No question. And I mean, there's some demographic issues. One has to question the idea of keeping everybody under 50 years of age out of work when they're really not in much danger, statistically.
Our good friends at CNN have cut away from the press briefing, and they're now have a thing up about the Pence quote from Italy. That's who we're closest to. And
if you want to get it first, folks, come here. Eventually, CNN's going to get it. I knew as soon as he said that, I knew they were going to pick it up.
Yeah, so apparently it looks like there are two parts of the briefing. The first one is about some of the drug interdiction, as Raheem pointed out, and then they're going to come back and do more specific to the virus. But yeah, CNN right now has Wolf Blitzer and Sanjay Gupta, among others, but they've just cut away.
Just to put this in perspective, remember, yesterday will go down as one of the most important briefings in the briefing room, equivalent to the height, I think, of the Cuban Missile Crisis and things like that, where President of the United States stood in front of charts and explained to the nation we could have 100,000, 240,000 citizens, up to maybe 2.2 million if he didn't do anything, was there for over 2 hours. And CNN, in their snarkiness and their pettiness, cut away from him at the beginning of it. To me, it's just unacceptable. I don't care how much fight you got going, how much you hate the guy. You owe it to the American people, as if you're a real news organization, if he's up there and flanked by. He had Fauci up there. He had Birx up there. They knew it was going to be he had committed to come in and talk about the model, and it's just not acceptable.
I'm kind of speechless about this doubling down strategy that CNN is taking, because you just spelled out yesterday. Let's spell out today. You've got the nation's attorney general up there, the president of the United States, decorated Joint Chiefs across the U.S. national security infrastructure, talking about now enhanced counter-narcotics operations because they've seen a massive uptick in criminal activity on the back of this pandemic and what's going on, confronting the cartels on the southern border. The Attorney General literally right now is going through the detail in what's going on, how many Americans' lives it's affecting. He just read out number 70,000 lives a year affected directly by the trafficking. And they're spelling this out. And instead, we're being treated to the Skype and Zoom cameras from CNN's analysts sitting in their rec rooms with their Xbox 360s behind them.
Beating on Pence and the Pence quote. Not that the Pence quote should be analyzed, but you don't need to do it here. Let's go to – we had some fireworks today with Cuomo, Newsom. And I want to make sure we get to all that.
And just to follow what Raheem was saying, I mean, CNN would rather their audience watch Gloria Borger from the rec room or the study or whatever.
Sure, a hater, pure hate.
Rather than Mark Milley, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff.
Talking about breaking the cartels, right? Not that would be of interest to anybody in the nation, right?
Well, it's also kind of interesting because they arrested the guy who was the defense head of Venezuela, and they had been shipping 22 tons of cocaine to the U.S. every year with Maduro. So a big part of this is we're trying to hunt down Maduro right now, and I hope we get him.
Yeah, okay. And that's – go ahead, Raheem.
So no, here's the deal, right? You don't cover the press conference. You don't get to take up a seat in that room. Okay, that should be the deal for CNN.
Jim Acosta gives us a seat. If you cut the cameras off, you go tap Jim Acosta on the shoulder and say, hey, come on here, buddy. You're not going to get your prime time. Your prime time hate.
Let's get some America's Voice.news
there's an article out yesterday that said the reason there are fewer there seemingly every day, it's because the press is frightened about their health. You know, the fear is turning them into specialists of self-separation.
Here's why. Steve Cortez tweeted out there. You gave me the heads up. Cortez, one of the best guys out there, one of the smartest guys out there. That 78 to 80% of Americans,
84% of all Americans are watching at least part of
and
the president's speech.
Trump's ratings are going up, and Cuomo's ratings are going up as the American people see them in action, see him taking leadership. Gavin Newsom, we'll get to this in a second. And that's what's driving CNN nuts. CNN is going crazy. The first question that Wolf Blitzer had of Vice President Pence today was to jump him on, hey, you guys were so late. You didn't get to this thing. Isn't it your fault that this thing's Pence comes back. He did throw CDC under the bus, but also the Chinese Communist Party. But it's the very first question. It's driving them nuts that he's essentially, in their mind, replaced the rallies with the press conferences, but it's news.
And especially with Secretary Pompeo's speech yesterday talking about pushing for free elections in Venezuela. This is a huge deal. I've brought it up several times recently about what's going to happen with China and Russia trying to swoop in to get the energy resources. Got to make sure that U.S. and our oil companies are better than the Russian or the Chinese oil companies. There's an article I'm going to tweet out right now from Josh Meyer, Politico's from a couple years ago, the secret backstory of how Obama let Hezbollah off the hook. This is Politico. This isn't like on warroom.org or on Breitbart or one of ours, but they walk through. If you want to know why Venezuela is important and how Hezbollah money and Iranian money and all that goes through, the reason why Maduro wants those drugs to go to the U.S. is that's how he funds his regime.
Well, not just that. If China or Russia get their hands on Venezuela right now, the oil industry in the United States is never coming back. West Texas is never coming back, right? West Texas oil.
Here's the deal with Venezuelan oil. I'll just be clear about it. Venezuelan oil cannot survive without American help because we ship distillates to Venezuela so they can mix it with that black tar coming out of the ground that looks like bad toothpaste. They're a nothing burger without our help.
Jason, you're tweeting that out?
Yes.
Just tell people where they can find it.
Yep, at Jason Miller in DC. And I'll also, if you go to #WarRoomPandemic, it'll be on there. And I will tag Raheem and Jack. And if Steve was on Twitter.
I just wanted to give you a plug.
Oh, that was nice, Raheem.
It's a hot Twitter feed. Okay, go to #WarRoomPandemic or at @WarRoomPandemic, at @WarRoom2020. Hashtag 30 Days to Save America. You go there, you're going to see the Hammer program. You break the back of this virus. If we're going to take 30 days, let's take 30 days.
And the website for that as well, 30daystosaveamerica.com. You can download all the graphics Instagram, cell phone backgrounds, desktop backgrounds, things for all of your social media profiles. 30daystosaveamerica.com.
And you're putting up also articles. There's all types of the analysis that we have, everything we have up there about how to listen. If we're going to take 30 days off, and now they're implying we're going to take 60 days off, and if we're going to take 60 days off, it's going to be another couple of $1 trillion. Every hour that the nation is stood down is valuable, and what we have to do is attack this virus. We'll be back in 1 second.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
New York's Talk Radio 77 WABC. This is War Room Pandemic, the New York City special report every day of the week on the workday, 5 to 6 p.m. I want to thank the team at WABC to really help us get this show going. We're at Fort Defiance down on Capitol Hill. I want to go, there was a little tete-a-tete between the governor of California and the governor of New York today. Let's play it.
Yeah. First of all, here is, I want to go to Cuomo first or the Newsom first?
Let's do Cuomo first.
Okay. So here's Governor Cuomo.
Why don't we have medical supplies made in this country? Why are we shopping in China for basic medical supplies?
So that's Governor Cuomo. But
and by the way, that's economic nationalism right there. So we're signing Governor Cuomo up. This is the Peter Navarro, Steve Bannon, Donald Trump economic nationalist plan. We're now glad that Governor Cuomo is a card carrying member.
And we've just outed another listener.
Exactly. So we agree with you 100%. But Newsom had kind of a comeback.
Yeah, California Governor Gavin Newsom, which I know we've gotten some heat from the listeners, like, hey, you're giving too much love to Governor Cuomo.
But Cuomo ought to understand also that there's another guy thinking of that Democratic nomination because they're tossing Joe Biden to the side.
His body's not even cold yet, and they're already
the
climbing.
daily War Room polling is leaning towards Newsom now.
Okay, here's Governor Newsom from California.
Received 170 ventilators. LA County specifically received 170 ventilators from the national stockpile. Unfortunately, they weren't working, but I didn't call a press conference, didn't run on your show to discuss that. We actually delivered overnight those ventilators when we found out they weren't working, and we brought them into Silicon Valley, a company that's in the green tech space, Bloom Energy, and they completely refurbished them, sent them back.
Boom. We didn't run on your show. Okay, Governor Cuomo, we're waiting for your comeback. Okay, we got another thing we want to finish with. You guys have done an amazing job on this 30 days to save America. This is the program. If every day we're burning daylight now, if we're going to take off, the President of the United States has made a decision, we're taking it off. Let's go hard. Let's get this. Let's not flatten the curve. Let's not spread the rise or whatever it is. Let's destroy this thing. Let's crash it. And this is a crash program. It's tough. We're not saying it's not tough. We also make some recommendations about quarantine. I realize the mayor and the governor go nuts about that, but it's something you have to think about to really wring this out of the system. Also, you've got Raheem. You've got something else you want to play, and maybe leave on a light note.
Yeah, we've got the 30 days to save America. If you go to 30daystosaveamerica.com, Jason Miller's great strapline for it all. We have all the information up there. We're going to keep updating with information up there, and you got lots of graphics up there to G up morale and spirits all around the country. I think it's very important. Somebody else who was G'ing up morale and spirits is a Brooklyn native, Larry David, fantastic comedian. Did a remarkable job on the latest season of Curb Your Enthusiasm. I thought we should play this. Do we have the clip, Jason?
I own a piece of the action.
Yeah, that's true.
Saying.
All right, here we go. Here's Larry David.
Hello, I'm Larry David. Obviously, somebody put me up to this because it's generally not the kind of thing I do, but I basically want to address the idiots out there, and you know who you are. You're going out, I don't know what you're doing, you're socializing too close, it's not good, you're hurting old people like me. Well, not me, I have nothing to do with it, I'll never see you, but let's say other old people who might be your relatives, who the hell knows. But the problem is you're passing up a fantastic opportunity, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to stay in the house, sit on the couch, and watch TV. I mean, I don't know how you're passing that up. Well, maybe because you're not that bright. But here it is. Go home, watch TV. That's my advice to you.
Okay, so you got to put a little humor there. Now, the president is now up there. I think they're going to have the scientists later. This is a very important day, starting of a horrific month, particularly in New York City. That's why we're doing this special report. The president, I think, today and over the next couple of days is going to be laying out the policies to back up the analytics. We'll see you again tomorrow afternoon, 5 o'clock here on WABC, and at 10 a.m. tomorrow morning on Dish TV 219.